This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila and Thailand. Hello, Esther.
Hi, Alma. I'm Esther Odanga from EBC Thailand Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines, Filipinos are no longer required to wear face shields outdoors, according to President Duterte announced on Wednesday.
Thousands have fled the town in West Myanmar after days of fighting between anti-junta dissidents and the military, during which soldiers bombed civilian homes, residents and local media said Wednesday.
We signed the RCEP agreement.
And the ASEAN community and its free trade agreement, or FTA partners, are on course to enforce one of the biggest economic trade pacts by early next year, according to the Department of Trade and Industry.
Direction of the economy.
The fourth ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit demonstrated the practical application of inclusive business in public and private sectors to help ASEAN build back better from the COVID-19 crisis.
What the Council sees is how
First, here in the country, the Filipinos are now no longer required to wear face shields outdoors. That, according to President Duterte on Wednesday. The president made the pronouncement as he approved the recommendation of the Technical Advisory Group to limit the use of face shields to the so-called 3Cs, which refers to closed and crowded spaces and activities that promote close contact. Let's listen in.
Pwede na tanggalin sa labas. No more face shields outside. Ang limitasyon, ang face shields gamitin mo 3Cs, closed, whatever facility, hospital, o basta magkadikit-dikit. Crowded, ganun rin. It's a crowded room, tapos close lahat, mas delikado, at saka ang close contact kung magkadikit-dikit ang tao. Other than that, I have ordered, kung ganun lang naman, sabi ko, then I will order that we accept the recommendation itong Executive Department.
A recent study by The Lancet, a leading international medical journal, found that wearing a mask can decrease the risk of catching COVID-19 by 78%. The result of the study also showed that the risk of transmission is cut by 85% if a face shield is worn in addition to the mask.
Now let's go over here in Thailand, where the government has pushed back plans to reopen Bangkok and some other major cities to foreign nationals until November. We have more from Jomerl Baldo. Hi, Jomerl.
Hi, Esther. Yes, that is correct. The Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration, or the CCSA, said that Bangkok is set to get back on the tourist map and reopen by November 1st, on the condition that double-dose mass vaccination is made to at least 70% of the capital's population by the end of September. This pronouncement was made by the CCSA after Bangkok Governor Aswin Kwan Mang, earlier pushed for a tourism reopening schedule of Bangkok and 4 more provinces on the 1st of October. The other provinces are Chonburi, Phetchaburi, Prachuapkhirikan, and Chiang Mai. CCSA also said that as of Monday, September 20th, an estimated 42% of the 7 million Bangkok population has completed the 2-dose vaccine. To facilitate the reopening, Bangkok authorities has interacted with the Phuket Sandbox administration to learn insights from their opening last July. Dr. Chuet San, the director of the Emergency Health Hazard and Disease Control Division, said that the vaccine is the game changer as it creates confidence both for the residents and for the upcoming tourists. On Wednesday, Bangkok lagged the highest number of cases with 2,455 infections, while total cases across the country were 11,252 with 141 deaths. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you so much, Jomerl, for your update. Please stay safe and stay healthy.
You stay safe too. Reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand, I am Jomerl Bondadbaldo. We live in interesting times.
And now let's get an update on the coronavirus situation in Vietnam with the cities. This is the city of Phu Quoc not accepting any foreign tourists next month, and that and more from our EBC correspondent joining us live from Vietnam, Ralph Wandolph Empire. Hello, Ralph.
Hi there, Alma. That's right. Phu Quoc, one of the beautiful islands here in Vietnam, will not be ready to welcome fully vaccinated foreign tourists next month, as planned because the local vaccination rate has been low. Lam Van Thien, chairman of Ken Giang province, where Phu Quoc is located, said that by the end of October, the island would not have ensured necessary conditions to carry out its planned tourism reopening plan. He said only 35.2% of people aged 18 and above have got a first shot, and just 6.13% of residents have been fully vaccinated. The island needs another 250,000 to 300,000 doses to achieve herd immunity, but recent allocation has also been low, while the stipulated time between 2 doses of a COVID vaccine is 4 to 8 weeks. Even if the amount of needed vaccine doses was allocated right now, it would take around 2 months for Phu Quoc to achieve vaccination coverage for 90% of its population. That's according to Mr. Thien. And he further emphasized that the province will reopen international tourism when pandemic prevention measures are ensured at highest level. It will not sacrifice the health and lives of people for economic growth, he further added. Wee Quoc Thai, the director of Ken Giang's tourism department, said that there would be a rehearsal in October to review procedures on welcoming foreign tourists at the Phu Quoc airport and escorting them to the designated hotels. Now, in other news, Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh has proposed the COVAX facility to quickly give as many COVID-19 vaccines as possible to Vietnam. At an online meeting with Aurelia Nguyen, Managing Director of COVAX Vietnam, on Monday, the Prime Minister, Mr. Chinh, said that Vietnam is having difficulty ensuring enough vaccines for all and suggested COVAX complete all agreements on providing vaccines to the country within this year. Mr. Chinh said that COVAX should prioritize distributing vaccines to Vietnam as quickly as possible and as many as possible, especially in September, October, and November. He asked COVAX to provide the Moderna vaccine so Vietnam could administer second shots to those that have received the first. The Health Ministry has allowed the mixing of Pfizer and Moderna and given the second dose as Pfizer with receiver consent. He also proposed the facility helps connect and shares information about countries with a surplus of vaccines or those that have been allocated vaccines but do not need them right away for Vietnam to borrow or buy. Besides, COVAX should also support Vietnam to strengthen international cooperation in technology to produce vaccines and COVID-19 treatment drugs and access vaccines for those under 18. China added Vietnam has contributed $500,000 to COVAX and promised more donations to the facility. And that's the latest here in Vietnam. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much for all those updates, Ralph. Thank you for your time. See you soon.
My pleasure, Alma. Reporting live from Da Nang, Vietnam, I am Ralph Wandolph Empire. We live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, the United States Embassy donated various police equipment to the Philippine National Police in Camp Crame, Quezon City on Wednesday. In a statement Thursday, PNP Director for Logistics Major General Angelito Casimiro said the U.S. Embassy's Bureau of Diplomatic Security, Office of Anti-Terrorism Assistance, led by Regional Security Officer Stephen Lesniak, turned over 18 sets of Celebrite and 57 units of laptop computers to the PNP Anti-Cybercrime Group. Meanwhile, 4 units of Ford Ranger, 6 units of bomb suit, 5 units of logo scanner and veterinary equipment, aircon clinic renovation were given to the Explosive Ordnance Disposal or K9 Group EOD. 1 unit of Ford Ranger, 6 units of Harris Radio Tactical Medical Kits, Crisis Response Team Equipment, Advanced Crisis Response Team Equipment, and First Response to Medical Stabilization Kits were donated to Special Action Force. Casimiro, who represented PNP Chief General Guillermo Eleazar, thanked the U.S. for its gesture of generosity and unwavering support.
Meanwhile, the Vietnamese government has agreed to buy 20 million doses of the Virocell COVID-19 vaccine produced by China's Sinopharm. Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccine, Virocell, activated vaccine, is approved for emergency use in Vietnam. The source of Sinopharm vaccine in Vietnam has been mostly from the donation of Phan Tinh Phat, a private group in Ho Chi Minh City, as well as some 700,000 doses as aid from the Chinese government. Earlier this week, the Drug Administration of Vietnam has agreed to allow VMedimex pay for 30 million doses of the Hayat-Vax COVID-19 vaccines, which are essentially Sinopharm vaccines but are packed in the UAE. It was given conditional approval by the Vietnamese Health Ministry for emergency use on September 10, the 7th to obtain such authorization after AstraZeneca, Pfizer-BioNTech, Sputnik V, Moderna, Janssen, and Sinopharm's Virocell. To date, the country has received about 50 million doses of COVID vaccines.
In other news, the Department of Transportation, or DOTR, aims to strike a balance between public welfare amid a health crisis and the right of investors in expressway for a reasonable return. Transportation Secretary Arthur P. Tugade said his group understands that expressway operators need revenues to sustain their operations, but noted the public interest is always paramount. Tugade chairs the Toll Regulatory Board, or TRB, and he is part of a possible senatorial slate of the PDP Laban in coming elections. As about upcoming elections, Tugade simply said he will first focus on finishing the various development projects of his agency.
In other news, thousands have fled a town in West Myanmar after days of fighting between anti-junta dissidents and the military, during which soldiers bombed civilian homes, and that is according to residents and local media on Wednesday. Attacks on junta assets have increased after lawmakers ousted by the generals called for a people's defensive war earlier this month. Soldiers fought a gun battle with around 100 members of a local defense group after being ambushed in Than Lang in remote Chin State near the India border on September 18, according to junta spokesman Zhao Mintun. He didn't give any casualty figures. Military spokesman Zhao Mintun said 20 homes and a government building had been destroyed in a fire after the September 18 clash without specifying a cause. In recent weeks, anti-junta fighters have attacked communications towers belonging to the military-owned Mytel across the country, including in Chin State. The United Nations had already warned renewed fighting in the region was sending more people fleeing into India, where they urgently required food and shelter. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights, sharpen your instincts for smart decision making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
At may tuto pa rin po akong isang letter sender request ngayong linggo, September 26 sa Letters and Music from 1 to 2 p.m. Dito lamang sa Net 25. See you!
10th of July.
Welcome back. Back in the Philippines, a shipment of more than 1 million doses of US-made Pfizer vaccine procured by the national government arrived in the country Wednesday, and around 728,910 doses more are expected to be delivered on Thursday night. National Task Force Against COVID-19 Medical Advisor Dr. Teodoro Herbosa said the latest delivery of the life-saving shots would be distributed to local government units that have the capability to store vaccines that require ultra-low temperature. A total of 1,028,430 Pfizer doses were delivered. 811,980 doses were unloaded in Naiya at about 9:20 p.m. 128,700 doses sent to Cebu City, and 87,750 doses were flown to Davao City Thursday morning. As more vaccines arrive, Herbosa said the National Capital Region, or NCR's vaccination rate has improved, with more getting protected against the disease. Some areas, including NCR, have exhibited a slowdown or downtrend in active coronavirus infections. Data from the Department of Health showed that the average daily case of 19,709 last week showed a 5% decrease compared to the previous weeks.
Meanwhile, an official of the Department of the Interior and Local Government, or DILG, has recommended the wearing of the vaccination cards like IDs when going to public places. At the Laging Handa briefing, DILG Undersecretary Martin Dino, who was once a barangay captain himself, said that he would propose an additional requirement of health protocols to the Interagency Task Force for the management of emerging infectious diseases. Take a look.
Magalaw ang ating, kaya nga ngayon sa alert level 4, 10%, ang indoor, 30% ang alfresco. Pero sa indoor, kaya na nga, makikita mo, Yusek Rocky, lagi ang nakasabit ang aking face mask at nakasabit na ang aking ID at vaccination card. Dapat ngayon, i-request ko sa Interagency Task Force para maiutos sa lahat ng mga barangay na ito na sana ang maging sakripisyo ng bawat Pilipinong na bakunahan. Kung ikaw ay bakunado na, paglabas mo ng bahay, isuot mo na yung vaccination card. Why? Kamukha ng sinabi ni President Eric kanina, yung mga parokyano o yung mga papasok sa tinatanong nila, bakunado na ba? Paano mo malalaman na bakunado kung hindi nakasabit ang vaccination card? At paglabas mo ng bahay, hindi ka na maabala ng pulis, ng barangay, natatanungin ka, asan ang vaccination card mo? Kung antimano, isasabit mo na sa iyong dibdib. Di ba? At alam mo, nakita ko to nung bumiyahe ako, sabi sa akin, Yusek, ano yung malaki sabi ko, vaccination card? Ay, Yusek, safe ako tumabi sa'yo kasi bakunado ka na. Siguro isa nating maging to. Tsaka, ang face mask, ito yung pinaka-safe natin dahil pag itinakip mo to sa ilong mo at sa bibig, ibig sabihin, hindi natatansik yung virus. Kaya, nagiging successful tayo dito sa ating programa sa granular lockdown. Alam mo, kasama Rocky, hindi bago to. Last year pa to, meron tayong tinatawag na surgical lockdown. Kami sa DILG, inilabas na namin ito noon na pagka naapektuhan ng isang karsada, iyan ang ating ila-lockdown. Pagka naman isang village, yun ang ating ila-lockdown.
Now, several establishments and businesses have earlier agreed to give incentives to vaccinated individuals. The new alert level system and granular lockdowns are currently being piloted in the National Capital Region. The NCR mayors agreed to impose uniform alert level 4 with granular lockdowns to halt the spread of the dreaded COVID-19.
Starting Thursday until October 3, non-essential travel to Baguio City and the Benguet towns of La Trinidad, Itogon, Sablan, Tuba, and Tublay, or also known as Blist area, is suspended to curb the rising cases of COVID-19. Mayors of these areas jointly issued an advisory limiting the movement of people and entry of non-residents for non-essential travel as this city and Benguet province are placed under alert level 4. Residents traveling within the area, the Blist, are required to present documents showing that they are authorized persons outside residence or are moving around for essential reasons. Cargo delivery and logistics services for essential or non-essential goods will continue. Meantime, persons 17 years old and below, senior citizens aged 67 and above, and immunocompromised persons are encouraged to avoid unnecessary travels outside their homes, except for the purposes such as medical reasons. Travelers going in and out of Baguio City are also advised to pass Marcos Highway and avoid the Asin Nangalisan San Pascual Highway, which is intended only for essential cargo. Alma and I will be back after a short break.
Broadcast journalist Wayne De La Fuente returns on Philippine television and radio to deliver top stories and engage with the country's policymakers, shapers, and movers. Tatalakayin ang mga pangunahing balita live sa teleradyo ng Net25 at Radyo Aguila DCEC 1062. kasama si Weng de la Fuente sa
At itong balitalakayan, we live in interesting times.
Tropical cyclone o bagyo. Ang bagyo ay isang uri ng lagay na panahon na nagdudulot ng malalakas at mabibilis na hangin at pag-ulan na maaaring maging sanhi ng matitinding pagbaha, daluyong ng dagat at pag-uho ng lupa. Narito ang mga dapat gawin bago dumating ang bagyo. Una, alamin ang balita ukol sa panahon at mga anunsyong pangkaligtasan. Alamin ang plano ng komunidad sa pagbibigay babala at paglikas. Suriin ang bahay at kumpunihin ang mga mahina at sirang bahagi. Ihanda ang gobag na naglalaman ng mga pangangailangan ng pamilya. Ilikas ang mga alagang hayop sa ligtas na lugar. Kapag inabisuhan ang kinauukulan, mabilis na lumikas sa itinakdang evacuation center. Narito naman ang mga dapat gawin habang may bagyo. Una, maging mahinahon. Manatili sa loob ng bahay o evacuation center at makinig sa pinakabagong balita at taya ng panahon. Patayin ang main switch ng kuryente at valve ng tubig. Gumamit ng flashlight o emergency lamp. Maging maingat sa paggamit ng kandila o gasera. Umiwas sa mga salaming bintana. Ito naman ang dapat gawin pagkatapos ng bagyo. Hintayin ang abiso ng kinauukulan na ligtas ng bumalik sa tahanan. Umiwas sa mga natumbang puno, nasirang gusali at linya ng kuryente. Huwag gumala upang hindi maabala ang mga emergency services. Siguraduhing walang basa o nakababad na outlet o kagamitan bago buksan ang linya ng kuryente. Itapon ang mga naipong tubig sa lata, paso at gulong upang hindi pamahayan ng lamok.
Sa'yo, umikot ang aking mundo. Ang ulap ay napawi. Tunay na ligaya ang siyang nadaman. Ngayon'y di na muling mag-iisa.
Hello, this is Joss Garcia. Please catch me on Letters of Music this coming Sunday, September 26 at 1 to 2 p.m. on air and online. Only here in Net 25.
Welcome back. The food service sector here in the Philippines is asking the government to ease the vaccination requirement for their employees under the alert level system, as many still find it difficult to secure COVID-19 jabs. Now, restaurant owners of the Philippines, or Resto PH President Eric Teng, said at a Laging Handa briefing on Wednesday that not all restaurants may be able to comply. And here's what he said. Let's listen in.
Ang habol lang naman po namin ay dahan-dahan pagbubukas dahil hindi naman po kami nag-aangad na bilisan po natin ang pag-reopening dahil kailangan din po namin intindihin ang problema po ng ating mga ICU at ating mga medical frontliners. Kahit dahan-dahan lang po kami mag-open, happy na po kami. Kahit 10% lang po naman ngayon, it's better than zero, pero matagal pa po yan bago kami makapagbawi at maging normal. Kaya sana kung talaga po namang tama ang datos na nagiging stabilized na po yung ating COVID cases, ay sabay po sana natin pag-relax po ng restrictions at pag-increase po ng capacity ng restaurants. Well, nakakaawa din po kasi mga empleyado ng restaurant. Marami rin pong hindi nakapagbakuna dahil sa lugar nila hindi pa po sila natatawagan or naka-partial vaccination pa lang sila at iniintay po nila yung second dose. Lalo na po kung yung Sputnik, medyo matagal pong iniintayan ng second dose. Kaya sana naman po maintindihan at mabalanse din natin ang problema ng restaurant industry. Gusto naman ng karamihan na makapagbukas ng bakunado ang staff. Kaya lang po yung ibang lugar po talagang yung mga empleyado sa mga barangay nila nahirapan po sila makakuha ng vaccine. Yun naman po mga restaurants na nagkikater naman po talaga sa vaccinated. Hinahanap po ng customers namin right now. Pag naalaman nilang vaccinated ang staff, papasok po talaga sila. At nagtatanong pa kung vaccinated ba yung staff namin o hindi. So siguro ngayon lang naman po, kailangan po lang natin siguro ng konting tulungan, compromise para lang po malagpasan po natin itong alert level 4.
Based on the latest guidelines, indoor and outdoor dine-in capacity for restaurants are allowed at 10% and 30% capacity under Alert Level 4, respectively, given that their workers are fully vaccinated. The indoor dine-in services are only allowed for fully vaccinated customers. While President Tang appreciated the 10% indoor capacity, he is also looking forward to when the alert level is brought down to Alert Level 3 to allow more operations.
In other news, the ASEAN community and its free trade agreement, or FTA partners, are on course to enforce one of the biggest economic trade pacts by early next year, the Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, said Wednesday. Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez said the parties of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership are looking forward to implementing mega trade deal, as this will facilitate further cross-border business activities. Let's watch this.
We signed the RCEP agreement last year together with 14 of our FTA partners after 8 years of extensive negotiations. This is an ASEAN-led mega free trade deal, and the signing of the agreement demonstrates that the participating countries remain committed to keep their markets open for trade and investment under a stable and predictable environment despite the challenges brought by the COVID-19 pandemic and geopolitical tensions. President Rodrigo Roa Duterte has also highlighted its importance in his talk before the ASEAN Summit, saying the agreement will bolster regional economic integration and strengthen supply chain connectivity to boost our post-pandemic economic recovery. RCEP, as it will be explained later, is a historic FTA because it is the biggest trade agreement in the world, accounting for 30% of the world's population, 28% of the global GDP, and 28% of the world's total trade. The ASEAN and its FTA partners also remain on track to implement the agreement by January 1, 2022. Among the expected benefits of RCEP is an improved market access on goods, services, and investment. In 2020, the group of countries in the partnership represents 51% of Philippine exports, 68% of Philippine imports, and 58% of Philippine investments.
So, RCEP agreement consists of a lot of items, but I will just focus on the reduction of trade barriers on all tradable commodities with RCEP. Within RCEP from 2021 to 2030. When I say barriers, it's the gradual elimination of tariffs and a 50% reduction in NTNs, non-tariff measures.
And SMEs and their inclusion in the GVCs. Having one set of simplified rules in trade will facilitate trade transactions and will reduce administrative costs for exporters. In the process, this will encourage more production and manufacturing activities in the country. That will encourage companies to invest more in the ASEAN region, including the Philippines, that will build supply chains and services. This means more jobs and business opportunities for the Philippines.
Meanwhile, Taiwan has applied to join a major trans-Pacific trade deal, according to officials today, days after China said it also wanted to become a member of the agreement. Take a look. Signed by 11 Asia-Pacific countries in 2018, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP, is the region's biggest free trade pact and accounts for around 13.5% of the global economy. Most of the CTPP's member countries are Taiwan's key trade partners, accounting for over 24% of Taiwan's international trade, according to cabinet spokesman Lo Ping Cheng. Taiwan, he said, cannot be left out in the world and has to integrate into the regional economy. Negotiations for the sweeping trade deal were initially led by the United States as a way to increase its influence in the Asia-Pacific region. It was also designed to keep China, which has its own regional trade deal, locked out. But former President Donald Trump, who disdained multilateral agreements, pulled out of the deal in 2017. The CPTPP is the successor to those negotiations and includes Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, Peru, New Zealand, Singapore, and Vietnam. And the news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. We'll be right back.
Ngayong may pandemya, marami ang walang trabaho at mataas ang presyo ng bilihin. Isa sa nakikitang solusyon para makaiwas sa pagkagutom ay ang pagtatanim. May ilan, problemado sa espasyo dahil maliit ang kanilang lugar. Pero may sagot riyan para makapagtanim, ang hydroponics. Sa hydroponics, hindi ginagamitan ng lupa ang pinagtataniman, kundi tubig at nutrient solution lamang. Sa hydroponics, makakapagtanim ka ng gulay at kahit anong halaman. Masusolusyonan ang problema sa kagutuman at matutugunan ang seguridad sa pagkain.
Iba't ibang sakuna at kalamidad ang nararanasan ng bansa. Kapag may banta ng panganib, kailangang maging alerto at kung kailangang lumikas ay magtungo sa ligtas na lugar. Bilang paghahanda sa mga ganitong pagkakataon, mahalaga na may gobag na dadalhin ang pamilya. Narito ang dapat na nilalaman ng gobag ng isang pamilyang handa. Mahalagang dokumento sa selyadong lalagyan, flashlight, kandila, posporo at silbato. Radyo na may bago at ekstrang baterya. First aid kit kasama ang panlunas sa lagnat, LBM, sugat at iba pa. Ang mga gamot na regular na iniinom ng pamilya. Magagamit para sa mga sanggol, bata, matatanda at may kapansanan. Pera at mga barya. Pagkain na madaling ihanda, di na kailangang lutuin at sapat para sa 3 araw. Inuming tubig sa saradong lalagyan at sapat para sa 3 araw. Telepono, power bank at charger. Lubid, lumang dyaryo, matitibay na lalagyan, damit, kapote, bota at mga sanitary supplies, sleeping bag o banig at mga kumot. Suriin ang mga laman ng gobag kada 3 buwan at palitan ang mga laman nito na malapit ng masira. Ilagay ang gobag sa lugar na madali itong makita at makuha sa oras ng sakuna.
Welcome back. The Chinese government is unlikely to allow a disorderly collapse of real estate giant Evergrande, says Jeffrey Hawley, senior market analyst for Asia Pacific at Oanda. Financial markets have tumbled over fears that the Chinese group could collapse with the potential to derail the world's second biggest economy. Let's take a look.
Don't think a collapse is likely, but I think the main problem, or part of the volatility that's been surrounding Evergrande is a lack of clarity from the Chinese government about what they are going to do or not going to do about it. And that's led to lots of different scenarios being played out. It's hard to to think that the Chinese government would allow a disorderly collapse of Evergrande. There would be some knock-on effects in the property development market. So, you know, if you're a highly leveraged, smaller Chinese property developer and you're trying to raise offshore money or even onshore money, you may find that those doors are now closed to you, or the rates that you have to pay to secure finance are so high that it's just not worth doing. So there could be some spillover there. We just don't have this visibility yet as to what or the extent of the tentacles are that Evergrande have in other areas. Now, is it systematically important to the whole world that we have another financial crisis? No, I don't believe it is. I think it can be contained within China. Most of that debt is held in China by Chinese financial institutions. Yes, there is offshore bonds, but that's not where the majority of the debt is held. It's all in China. And as we know, the Chinese government runs everything in China. So I think it's a virtuous circle there, and they'll come to some sort of agreement or arrangement. Although China, well, the government is happy to send a warning shot across highly leveraged property developers, they don't want to see the property market tank, because obviously social stability is very important to the government. They obviously don't want to see retail investors lose all their money. They don't want to see millions of small and medium enterprise jobs go down the gurgler because of a disorderly collapse. So I don't see that as a scenario. But I can see it being chopped up, either sold off piece by piece, or a big debt equity swap with bondholders, which wipe out shareholders. Something will be arranged. It's a matter of how long the Chinese government's going to let this process play out.
In a statement to Shenzhen Stock Exchange, Evergrande's property unit Hengda said it had negotiated a plan to pay interest due on its 2025 bond, worth 232 million yuan, or approximately $35.9 million. Evergrande has admitted facing tremendous pressure as it tackles a debt pile of more than $300 billion and has warned that it may not be able to meet its liabilities. Financial markets have been hit this week over fears that the sprawling firm could collapse, with the potential to pulse through the world's second biggest economy and possibly beyond.
Meanwhile, back here in the country, residents and those working in Pasay City will soon enjoy easier public transportation after the Department of Transportation and the city government signed a deal for the construction of a monorail and extension of the Epifanio de los Santos Avenue, or EDSA tramo flyover. Take a look. Now, in a live broadcast on Facebook on Wednesday, DOTR Secretary Arthur Tugade and Pasay City Mayor Emmy Calixto Rubiano signed the Memorandum of Agreement, or MOA, for the proposed integrated Pasay monorail and EDSA tramo flyover extension project. Mr. Tugade said the project will be interoperable with the Light Rail Transit Line 1, or LRT1, Metro Rail Transit Line 3, or MRT3, the EDSA busway, and the EDSA greenways. Aside from its benefits to commuters, he also said the project will also create many jobs. He said the project is a partnership between the DOTR, Pasay City Government, and SM Prime Holdings.
In other news, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP Governor Benjamin Diokno is confident that the proportion of non-performing loans of Philippine banks to total loans will remain single-digit until next year, despite the rising stored loans due to the pandemic. In a briefing streamed through Central Bank's Facebook page on Wednesday, Diokno attributed the projected single-digit NPL ratio to banks' prudent credit risk management standards and the operationalization of the Financial Institutions Strategic Transfer, or FIST Act. Let's take a look.
NPL ratio of the banking system will remain at single-digit levels, owing to banks' prudent credit risk management standards and the operationalization of the Financial Institutions Strategic Transfer Act, or FIST Act. We estimate that the NPL ratio is likely to peak at 8.2% in 2022, which is twice the current NPL ratio, but will decline in the years thereafter. This level is significantly lower than that experienced the banking system during the Asian financial crisis. However, the non-performing loan ratio of the banking system increased to 4.5% as of end July 2021. This was accompanied by an NPL coverage ratio of 82.4% during the same period. We believe that loan quality will remain manageable as both BSP and the banks project the banking sector's non-performing loan ratio to settle between 5% and 6% by end December 2021. Moreover, the operationalization of the Financial Institutions Strategic Transfer Act will provide banks with a standby facility to offload their non-performing assets in case this poses a sharp increase. Banks also maintain sufficient capital and liquidity buffers. Both exceeded the BSP minimum threshold.
FEAST Act or Republic Act 11523 was signed into law on February 16, 2021. It is aimed to help financial institutions manage their non-performing assets by encouraging the private sector to manage, collect, and dispose of these assets and help rehabilitate distressed banks. Diokno said some banks have indicated an interest in disposing of their NPAs under this law.
Meanwhile, the fourth ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit demonstrated the practical application of inclusive business in the public and private sectors to help ASEAN build back better from the COVID-19 crisis. In collaboration with the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, or ASEAN-BAC, ASEAN aims to highlight good practices through the ASEAN Business Awards in November this year, which will recognize 10 inclusive businesses with the ASEAN Inclusive Business Awards. Let's listen in.
Business, the direction of the economy. This inclusive business is like an iceberg. So what I heard today, Duke and Faye, is as if they belong to the tip of the iceberg. So those who are championing IB and social enterprises. But what the council sees is how do you transform those who are underneath the tip of the iceberg, the 75%? How do you convince them, or what will make them advocate the principles of inclusive business? Because as mentioned, this is a strategy that precisely should make you viable. At the end of the day, there's profit, because that's the number one responsibility of any business, to create economic value. Having a platform where they can share experiences, and from there, Asianize. So also getting the advice and inputs from our knowledge partners and strategic partners, our dialogue partners like you, Max, OECD, and so on, everybody, so that we could deepen inclusive business and make it as part of the new normal. So since this is our fourth ASEAN Inclusive Business Summit, we are looking forward to the fifth, wherein we could really launch that platform. Now, from the ASEAN Business Council side, we have established what we call ARIBA. This is the ASEAN Responsible and Inclusive Business Alliance. Companies who have bought into the principle and wants to do more and wants to multiply. But I guess a missing link in our model is we need to have precisely now the captains of the industries, the big boys, the conglomerate. Because at the end of the day, they provide a demand. So we want to make sure that companies look at themselves to rebrand themselves as IB. Now, branding is a big game in business. How do you sustain a platform where it can continually impact on people and give them a sense of fulfillment and of accomplishment that they're really making a difference, but through the help of branding campaigns, media, social media, and so on.
I can see a lot of bridges that can be built with inclusive business. So going back to your question, Max, first of all, I think we have to understand that building the policy environment is extremely local. It's very context sensitive. We have to take into consideration the needs of the stakeholders in each and every country. That it doesn't mean that we cannot build communities, and the ASEAN is doing it very well. It's building a community of states that are working together on creating these enabling environments and trying even to start with something that's probably even here in Europe we heard about last week, which is mutual recognition. Meaning, can we create certifications that could be mutually recognized across countries so that transnational inclusive business could grow? So that's one question. The ecosystem approach. Well, the ecosystem approach is basically just to take the whole policy ecosystem as a whole and not to tackle just one bit of the problem on its own. You have to start, first of all, by raising awareness about what inclusive business is. I mean, we here as somehow an expert audience know what inclusive business is, know what social enterprises are. But the wider public, a lot of official policymakers still don't know what these concepts are about.
Building on the guidelines for the promotion of inclusive business in ASEAN endorsed in 2020, the summit discussed its application in national context, in particular, the establishment of an inclusive business accreditation and registration system and the provision of business coaching services for firms to develop inclusive business models. These actions will help identify, incentivize, and support businesses, including social enterprises, that can amplify their social impacts by developing inclusive business models. Brunei Darussalam, the ASEAN Chair 2021, hosted the summit, which was co-chaired or co-organized by Darussalam Enterprise or DARE, ESCAP, IBAN, OECD, the ASEAN Secretariat. The summit was attended by the government and the private sector representatives from ASEAN and beyond, investors and development organizations. As the incoming chair of ASEAN, Cambodia had announced the 5th ASEAN IB Summit to be organized in 2022. The summit was an activity of the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises, or ACC MSME or ACC MISMIS, and the sectoral body under the ASEAN Economic Community or AEC pillar coordinating MSME development in the region and contributed to the implementation of the ASEAN Strategic Action Plan for SME Development 2016-2025. And that's it for today's broadcast. Thank you very much, Esther, for keeping me company as always here on ASEAN in Focus.
It's always my pleasure, Alma. And before we go, I would like to greet, it's a bit late, but I would like to greet Tito Manny Garcia and Tita Chi Garcia. Belated happy wedding anniversary po. Stay safe and stay healthy. And that's the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Thank you for staying with us. From Land of Smiles, this is Esther Odanga, and we'll live in interesting times.
And we'll see you back tomorrow, same place, same time here on ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.
Alam mo sa tingin ko